Hi everyone, my name is Karen, this is my channel Rather Be Reading, and today I'm bringing to you a recent reads video. So, it has been a week since I last checked in. This video is just coming to you a little bit later than it normally would because I wanted to get my wrap up and TBR up before this video. So I am filming it when I would normally film it. You're just going to be seeing it a bit later. I think I'll end up having two recent reads videos back to back, but we just got to deal with it. But I am filming it when I would normally film it. So it is just a week's worth of reading that I'm talking about. It's just coming to you a little bit later than it normally would. And it has been a really successful reading week for me. I've had an amazing reading week, partly because a lot of the books I was reading were just that kind of perfect length to just get through really quickly. But I managed to complete a total of 8 books this week. So I'm really happy with that. And let's jump straight in and talk about them. I'm sitting in a weirder position than I normally do because I've already filmed 2 videos and my legs are sore. So I'm sitting in a weird way, and now I have to balance my notebook and my books in like a weird way. Anyway, so the first book that I completed this week was The Distant Hours by Kate Morton. So I, for some reason in my head, had thought that Kate Morton was this author who'd written like a million books, but she's actually only written, I think, 6 total. And she writes, from what I can gather, mainly dual timeline stories. So we're generally following a character in a more modern setting who is trying to discover something about the past, and then we get the past timeline as well. And that's the case with this one. We're following a character in 1992. And the reason it's set in 1992 is just because the other timeline that we're following is during World War II, and the characters in the World War II part are in their 30s. And in order for them to still be alive in the modern day part, it couldn't really be much beyond the 90s because they're like 90 years old in the 90s part. Anyway, so that's what we're following a character who is basically, her mother was an evacuee during World War II, which means that there were a lot of children who lived in London during the war who were evacuated to country areas to stay with families in country areas in case of bombings in the city. And her mother was one of those, and her mother was taken in by 3 sisters who lived in this castle, I think near Bath. I could be wrong. I always think that I remember this exactly where it is, and then I'm wrong. In fact, I don't think it is Bath. Anyway, it doesn't matter. In a castle, and there's all kinds of like, her mum's never talked about it, and when the character finds out about it, she wants to discover everything that went on, because these 3 sisters, their father wrote a very famous like story, like a children's kind of story, and it's all kind of about to do with that. I enjoyed this. I do think it was pretty slow, like to get going. The pacing was kind of slow. All of the kind of reveals, although they weren't necessarily like reveals, I guess, but like nothing kind of just really like had that kind of punchy effect that I was really looking for. There was nothing overly like shocking or exciting. But overall, like, it was okay. It was enjoyable. I will say that this is only the second Kate Morton that I've read, and a lot of the reviews were saying how this is like not her best book, because this was her 3rd published, and everyone was going, this did not live up to her first 2. So I definitely think that she's got better ones out there, but I did still enjoy this. I gave it 3.5 stars. It wasn't a bad book at all. It just, like I said, I've read The Lake House by her that I've previously read. I enjoyed a lot more than this one. The next book that I read was Murder at the Brightwell by Ashley Weaver. So this is a book, excuse me, that I received from NetGalley, but it was in like the Read Now section, because this is a book that was published, I think, back in 2014. It is the first book in a series, the Amory Ames series. And I was excited to get this because it's a book that I've heard, a series that I've heard a book Olive talk about quite often. And so I wanted to give it a go, and I loved this. So this is a mystery series. I think it's set in the 1930s. I don't think the year is ever said, but it's set, like, I think pre-World War II. And we're following Amory Ames, who is in a tumultuous marriage. They are married. She's married to her husband, but it's a love-hate marriage, which is a very interesting dynamic. And basically she ends up going away to stay at this hotel, and while she's there, a murder takes place, and it's all about that. So it's, like I said, it's almost cozy mystery-esque, but without a lot of the cheesiness that goes along with cozy mysteries, which, don't get me wrong, I love a good cheesy cozy mystery every now and again, but this is just, I don't even really know how to put it. It's like a cozy mystery but more mature almost. almost that's kind of how it feels, but like not mature as in like racy or anything like that. Anyway, I'm just getting off topic. Anyway, I really, really liked this. I loved the characters. I loved the main female character. I loved the relationship with her husband and that whole dynamic. Loved all of that. I enjoyed the mystery. I didn't think it was like super predictable or anything like that. I just really, really genuinely loved this. I'm definitely going to be continuing on with the series. I think my library has these books. So as soon as my library is back up with being able to place holds, I will be requesting the next book in this series. Really, really, really enjoyed it. And I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. Like, I genuinely loved it and recommend checking it out. The next book that I completed was An Enchantment of Ravens by Margaret Rogerson. So this is a YA fantasy. It's basically about a girl who is a quite prolific portrait painter. And they live in this world where they're a fae. But the fae can't craft. So they can't do anything that kind of creates anything. They can't paint. They can't cook. They can't make clothing, anything like that. And so they come to humans for that. And that's kind of how fae and humans interact. And she is a very prolific portrait painter. And she ends up painting a portrait of this like fae prince, and paints human sorrow into his eyes, which is like hugely frowned upon. And he ends up taking her kind of captive and is taking her back to where he lives in the fae kingdom or whatever, so that he can put her on trial for doing this, because it's put him in a very precarious position within the kingdom. And basically it's almost like a road trip story, but like a fantastical road trip story. It's mainly about their journey of him taking her on like where they're trying to go. That's kind of where the story like kind of goes. I had mixed feelings. I enjoyed this. I thought that the romance was, I enjoyed it, but it was underdeveloped. The world I liked, but it was underdeveloped. There are a lot of I don't know, just things that were put in there, and like even plot points and everything that would happen, and you would go, I enjoyed that, but like it didn't like expand on it enough. And this book is only, I think, just over 300 pages, so I definitely think this book could have been longer. Like, I easily think this book could have added in like a whole another 100 pages and really expanded on some things a bit more. But I did enjoy it. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars, and I'm definitely interested in reading her the second book that she had. Is it The Sorcery of Thorns? I'm definitely interested in picking that one up, because the premise of that one sounds way more up my alley than this one, and I did enjoy this one, so I think that I would enjoy that one even more. But I did enjoy it. I gave it 3.5 stars. Next, I read Me vs. Me by Sarah Mlynowski. This was actually a reread. This is one that I had on my bookshelves that I read years and years ago, but I couldn't really remember anything about. So I picked it up to see whether it was worth keeping on my shelves. This is basically a chick lit novel, and it's very much a sliding doors premise, which I friggin' love. A sliding doors alternate reality setting. I love that shit. This is, so basically following a girl or a woman who has just got a job offer in New York for her like dream job. She lives in Phoenix, but she gets this job offer and it's like her dream job. But her boyfriend that she's had for several years doesn't want to go with her. But she's basically moving the next day. But then the night before she's leaving, the boyfriend proposes to her and asks her to marry him, but stay in Phoenix. And she accepts the proposal there that night, but is like, oh, don't know what to do. And then I think a shooting star or something is going over the sky, and she wishes that she could have both. That's where we split off, and we get both storylines of whether she went to New York for this dream job or she stays in Phoenix to marry the boyfriend. But it's a little bit different in that the main character is self-aware of the two storylines. So she basically, in the storyline you're kind of following at the beginning, she says to the boyfriend, no, I can't marry you. I want to go to New York. This is my dream. I'm going. And goes to New York, has that first day in New York, goes to sleep that night, wakes up back right at the beginning of the day where she's just accepted the proposal, and stays in Phoenix in that. But she's aware. She's like, what's going on? And so you kind of get each day that she goes to bed and then relives the day in the two timelines. And she's aware of what's going on in each. So I really, really love that premise. And this was okay. It was an enjoyable, fun, easy to read storyline. Sorry, I'm just shifting my legs. But having said that, there is one of the storylines is very clearly the like superior life, if you will, that I understand being conflicted about it, but it's very clear, like, even from the beginning, you're kind of like, well, I feel like you should do this. But even as the story progresses, you're just like, one of the storylines is very clearly superior to the other. And then there's something that happens at the end in the way that it's resolved as to which life that I didn't love. But I can see why it happened, but I don't love it. Anyway, I did enjoy it. It's a very enjoyable story. Like I said, I love a sliding doors premise. In the end, I gave this 3.25 stars. God, I've flipped the page in my notebooks. I can't remember what I read next. Oh, yes. Next I read Bright Before Sunrise by Tiffany Schmidt. Now, I mentioned, I think, when I hauled this from the library, because this is one of the books that I needed to read for one of my goals this year. And I didn't know what it was about, but for some reason in my head, I thought that this was like a paranormal type book. And then when I got it and I saw the love heart on the sign, I was like, oh, it's a romance. It is. This is just a straight up YA contemporary romance. Don't know where I got the paranormal thoughts from. It's got nothing paranormal in it whatsoever. It's basically about... It's very, like, when was this published? Because it's pretty typical of, like, mid, 2000s to, like, 2010s type of YA love story. Where's the publication page here? 2014. So, it's basically about a girl who is the perfect girl, perfect grades, volunteers, is just loved by everyone at her school, is a great girl, all of that, but has a lot of, like, underlying things under the surface that she's dealing with. And then you've got the boy who is new to the school and has recently moved to the school from, like, the bad area of, like, a town, like, the next town over, which is, like, lower socioeconomic status, I guess, and so he's a bit of an outcast, and basically it's about the two of them. It's very, very typical of that story. And I didn't hate it. Like, I enjoyed it. It was fine. But I felt, like, as I was reading it, I feel like I've read this book, like, 8 times before. It's very... This whole book is set over basically one night. You get kind of the beginning, you start off with them at school that day, and that kind of sets up what's going to happen, like, that night and into the evening, and you get it over, like, the course of that night. So it's all crammed into a less than 24-hour period, which causes some real insta-lovey, insta-attraction, insta-romance situations, which can be done okay, and, like, it's whatever. But like I said, this was okay. It was nothing amazing. I ended up giving it just a straight 3 stars. I then read Eleanor Park by Rainbow Rowell. So this is another YA contemporary, but of a very different kind of vibe than the other one. This is set in the 80s, and you're following 2 characters, Eleanor and Park. Eleanor is overweight. She's got red hair. She comes from a very kind of different family situation. You've then got Park, who is half Korean, and it's set in, like I said, in the 80s with them basically in high school, and it's basically about their relationship, but it focuses on a lot more than the relationship, which I really liked. It's about their relationship, and that's the main thing of, like, what this book is about, but you get a lot of what's happening in their lives and their family lives. There's a lot of stuff going on in the background. I don't want to go too much into it because I don't want to, not that it's really spoilers, but I don't want to, like, spoil anything for you. And I really liked getting to see, like, more of just, because, like, a lot of times, obviously, as we know with YA contemporary, families are, like, non-existent. And you do get a lot of the families in this, which I liked, and I liked that it's showing different family, different types of families and different family issues. I really liked all of that. It's obviously got some good diversity in there with a half Korean main character, an overweight main character, like I said, kind of different family situations. I think a problem, because this gets kind of mixed reviews. You get people who love this and people who hate this. I don't fall into either camp. I enjoyed this. Well, I quite enjoyed it. I think a problem that a lot of people have with this is the ending. It's not, I'm not going to spoil it, but it's not as wrapped up as I think a lot of people would like. And I had mixed feelings about that because there's one part of that I was like, that doesn't bother me. I'm totally happy for that to kind of be like left for us, the reader. But there was another part of it that I was like, but I really feel like we should have been like, this part of it should have been like, we should have been given a bit more. So I had, like I said, I didn't hate it. I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I genuinely enjoyed it. But it didn't like blow me out of the water like it did for a lot of people. But I did enjoy it. So got that one. Next, we have the audiobook that I read this week, which was The Sparkle Pages by Meg Bignell. So I had mentioned last week that I had started the Interestings. I haven't officially DNF'd that. I just didn't pick it up again because I needed to read The Sparkle Pages for my owls, which if you've already seen my wrap up, you know that I completed my owls. But I needed to get to this, and so I just didn't want to start that. And then, so I was just like, I've put the Interestings way back on the back burner. It's still on my currently reading shelf, but I basically think I'm going to take it off. And I'm just going to get to it when I get to it, and try it again after a bit of time has passed. But anyway, so I started The Sparkle Pages. Like I said, I needed to read that for owls. And this is I guess, chick lit. It's Australian, which I didn't know. Like I said, I literally, because I had to, so I read this one for owls, and it was the owl to read a book with a heart on the cover. And I knew that I didn't have much that was coming up on my TBR that was going to fit that. So I literally, when I saw that and was putting together my TBR last month, I went through my, like the shelf that I have tagged on Libby with all of the books that I want to get to at some point. Because I literally will just look at it. I, once or twice a week, will go through the new arrivals on my Libby and just tag any book that looks slightly interesting to me. And basically I just work my way through that shelf. And so I just literally went through that tag until I found a book that had a heart on the cover. And so I didn't really know anything about it. It's a chick lit novel. It's Australian, by an Australian author. And it's not just Australian, but it is set in Hobart in Tasmania, which, in case you don't know, which you probably don't, I was actually born in Hobart in Tasmania. I lived there until I was 18 months old. So I was like, oh, so that was a really fun setting. I have read I don't even know if I've read any books that are set in Tasmania. So I really, really enjoyed that about it. Because it's just not a setting that you see. So I loved that. And it's about a woman who, so the whole premise of it is that it's at the beginning, it's New Year's, and she wants to shake up her marriage, basically. She's married and they've got 4 or 5 kids. I can't remember. They've got a bunch of kids. And she's just feeling like maybe their marriage has gotten a bit stale and the passion's kind of gone, and she's a bit worried about that. And so it's about her trying to do this sparkle project, I think she calls it, where she's basically trying to put the spark back into the relationship. So that's kind of like but that's just more used as the like basis to kind of kick off the story. Sorry, I'm getting a low power warning. So that's the basis that kind of the story jumps off from, but you do get a lot about her life, obviously, and a lot of different stuff in there to do with that. It's very, very comical, almost to the point at sometimes of being crass. It kind of walks the line, but I didn't mind that. I don't have I'm not sensitive in my type of humor like that. But if you, like, makes a lot of jokes and different, like, funny parts about her sex life with her husband. So if you don't like anything like that, or her making, like, funny comments about different things, then avoid this because you won't like it. But if that doesn't bother you at all, I did find it quite, like, comical and stuff, and I enjoyed that part of it. There's a whole kind of part of the storyline that she used to be a viola player in university, and out of university, was a very, 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 like, accomplished viola player. But something has happened that she hasn't played the viola in years, and that's part of the story too, is trying to figure out why she's not playing the viola anymore, and everyone keeps wanting her to pick the viola back up again, and all of that. So that's part of the story as well, and I genuinely, like, I enjoyed it. Like I said, this isn't like a groundbreaking novel that's gonna, like, knock anyone's socks off, but I did genuinely really enjoy it, and I gave it 3.5 stars. And then the final book that I read this week, which I hinted at in my TBR, if you saw, was The Lie by C.L. Taylor. So I put this on my May TBR. I did finish this. This was on my TBR, and I'd already put my TBR together, but I finished this right on the 1st of May. And it's the 2nd today. So I finished this on the 1st, because like I said, I've been getting through, so you may have noticed I got through 8 books and only one of them was an audio. I've been basically getting through a book a day over this past week. I've just been really flying through things. So this is a thriller. I said, I have read Sleep by C.L. Taylor, which is one of her more recent novels, and I quite enjoyed that. I think I gave it like a 4-star, really enjoyed it. And I remember when I picked this up, I was like, oh wait, is this that book that Aoife hated? it is. I checked. She gave this 1 star. And so when I was going into this, like, oh boy, okay, let's see what's going to be going on with this. This definitely does not live up to Sleep, which obviously she published several years later, because that was a 2019 release, I believe, and this one was published in, I think it was 2015. Yeah, 2015. So I definitely think she's grown as a writer, but I didn't hate this at all the way Aoife did, but I can see why someone maybe would. So this is a story about, we're basically following a character who is living this life, and we know that she is not who she says that she is. Basically, that something's happened in her past and she's changed her name and is living, and like moved away and is living this like new life. And then we kind of get this split timeline of we're following her in the present day living this new life, where someone is starting to kind of send her cryptic notes that they know who she is and blah blah blah. And then we go back and we get the timeline of who she was in the past and like everything that was going on and that led up to her changing her name and her identity. So I can see why someone would hate this. I didn't hate it, but there was a lot in here that I should have loved, but didn't hit the mark. So a big part of the story is that it's about her and a bunch of her friends on holidays in Nepal, and they go to this like spa retreat, this very remote spa retreat. That's kind of the setting for a big part of the past storyline. And everything that was going on there in that storyline, I liked the idea of, but the execution just wasn't there. There's almost some like cultish type stuff going on. That's all I'm going to say. And I love anything to do with that, but it kind of worked, but then it didn't. And the main character, it's not that she's not likable necessarily. She's just, I don't want to say dumb, but there's a lot of decisions and stuff, or like things that happen that you're just like, why? Like, why are you doing that? There's a lot of that going on. It's just like, why are you still in this situation? Just like, you should have skedaddled a long time ago type of thing. And that's just, it starts to become very like not a believable story, because you just feel like most people would not end up in this situation. Because the thing with cult type storylines that kind of happen in that way is it needs to be a gradual build up that the reader can see, yes, okay, I can see how a normal individual would have ended up in this type of situation. And that's not what happens here. From the get-go, like, shit is weird, and you're just like, why are you still in this situation? So there's a lot of that, which definitely takes away from that whole past storyline. And I will say, though, that the past storyline was way better than the present storyline. Like, that was just the more interesting storyline. So when it would go back to the present, I'd just be like, yeah, okay, can we get back to the past part? So, like I said, the two timelines, there was definitely a preference there as well. I feel like I've rambled and my thoughts make no sense about this. I liked it, but it wasn't great. I gave it 3.25 stars. I don't think it's like a bad book, although Aoife would disagree. I just realized how dark this video has gotten. I apologize about this lighting. I'm filming this a lot later in the day than I normally do, and I just realized it's almost 4:10, and give me a second, I'm going to try and fix the lighting. That's better. I had put my blind most of the way down because I had weird sun patches in earlier videos, but I hadn't realized how dark it had gotten. So I put the blind back up, and that has helped. We're almost at the end anyway. So like I said, I gave this 3.25 stars. That's it. Those are the 8 books that I read. Like I said, I had a great reading week. Really happy with how much I managed to get read. In terms of what I'm currently reading The Secrets They Left Behind? I'm going to just quickly click on my Goodreads and clarify that title. It's by Lissa Marie Redmond. It's a thriller that I have from NetGalley. It's a NetGalley arc. This is one, if you saw my TBR, it actually came out in April. Wow, this video is getting dark. We've had really gloomy weather here this week. It's been like raining and pouring off and on like this whole week. So we haven't had a lot of sunshine. So anyway, The Secrets They Left Behind. Yeah, so this one is about a woman who is a police detective, and she basically goes undercover as a freshman college student, because there are 3 freshman college students who live in this small town that just have disappeared, and she's basically trying to infiltrate the friends and all of that to find out what happened to these girls. I am like 2/3 of the way through that. We'll probably get that done today. But that is what I'm currently reading, and I'm not listening to any audiobooks unless you count, like I said, that I counted started the interestings, but did I even talk about that in this video? I think I did. Yeah, I did when I talked about Sparkle Page. Anyway, I put that completely. I'm going to take that off my currently reading and just restart that over whenever. Anyway, this video is so long and I'm rambling and the lighting's gone really bad. Okay, that's it. I would love to chat with you guys in the comments down below if you've read any of these, if you've got any thoughts on how your guys' reading week has been. I would love to chat in the comments down below. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more from my channel. That is all I have for this video today.